As COP26 approaches this fall, there's a lot of interest in nature-based solutions to climate change. The Canadian Institute for Climate Change has produced 3 case studies, and we're going to talk to Julien Bourque, who's the research associate for the urban forest study. So welcome to the interview, Julien.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, maybe we could start with an overview of your case study, please.
So the case study is on the city of Montreal and the initiatives that they've had and tools that they've used to increase the canopy and the overall objectives that they have that they're looking to reach with these tools. So we're looking at the policy, the tree policy, excuse me, that was initiated a couple of years ago, almost 10 years ago, and everything that led to the urban canopy action plan. Excuse me, I'm trying to translate in my head as I from French to English as I tell you these. So the goal from that action plan was to increase the canopy to 25% by 2025. Canopy is the solid leaf surface as in proportions to the whole city of Montreal or the island. And in that plan, they had set objectives for each of the boroughs and cities that are on the island of Montreal, and each of the boroughs then went on and with financing from the city of Montreal to go and reach these goals. So it was divided in public space, so residential, commercial, industrial, and public-owned land.
Is there an emphasis in urban forest strategies like this to plant new forests? I'm under the assumption, and this may be incorrect, that young forests, vigorously growing forests, capture more carbon than mature forests. Would that be a correct assumption?
That's true for carbon capture. As a tree grows, 85% of a tree is carbon. So the process of capturing through the leaves and then storing in the body of the tree, if we can say that. As the tree grows, it needs carbon to grow, so therefore it captures more carbon. What we're looking into in these case studies is to recognize the other societal, I guess, benefits and environmental benefits that the tree is going to bring. A smaller tree, as it grows, will not give as much shade, for example, as opposed to a mature tree. When it grows, it's going to throw shade on asphalt or walls or roofs that will contribute to urban heat islands, and that's going to be exacerbated by climate change. So that's going to alleviate some of the pressure. And definitely provide some of these benefits for the population within the area where the trees are. And the same thing can be said about water management for stormwater management specifically, as climate change is going to bring more stormwater and more intense precipitations. The root system, the foliage is going to be able to alleviate some of that as well. So there's benefits for some smaller trees in terms of carbon capture, but definitely mature trees also bring good benefits.
Now, I live on Vancouver Island off the west coast of Canada, and the population in our city is growing, as it is in many cities across the world. And one of the first things that happens when they build new homes is they cut down trees. And I would imagine that the island of Montreal is dealing with that same sort of issue. Would that be correct to say?
Is given that Montreal is, as an island, is fairly populated and densely populated as it is through its urbanization, that we see that process more in the northern crown and southern shores of Montreal, where there is definitely expansion of urbanization, and where these practices of cutting down trees to make room for the bigger projects, whether it's single family homes or condo towers. That's the I would say the status quo with certain projects that would have a focus on keeping the trees. The important thing is definitely rethinking the way we do urbanization or urban expansion and incorporating the trees within these projects, making sure we keep the ones that are mature, that are healthy, that provide these benefits, and accounting for them, and seeing really the value that they have for the population that are going to live there. In terms of what's existing in already urbanized areas, it is important as well to keep the trees that we have, because all the capital investments that were made for these trees, whether it's from planting all the way to maintenance, all these benefits are lost. All these capital investments are lost. So keeping what we have is definitely important, and planting in the new trees that we plant, making sure we plant them the right way, we give them the right space and the right care over the course of their years, for the same idea of keeping the capital investments is going to be really important.
What is Montreal and its boroughs doing to expand the urban forest?
So they're working on different fronts. The city of Montreal is definitely already setting the objectives, knowing what you're working with was a crucial step. I think separating it in terms of land use as well was a great idea, to know where you're lagging and where more effort needs to be done, because some of these land use definitely don't have the same cost per tree. What I mean there is, planting a tree in a park, for example, is much less expensive than planting a tree in a parking lot in an industrial area, because you have to excavate and all these extra costs. So already setting these objectives was definitely a good first step. Then putting the funds and the capital needed to achieve these goals was also a major step, already for the different boroughs and cities, but also for private sector, private land, which is about 60%, I think, of tree potential in the city of Montreal, and we see similar numbers in other cities in Canada. So making sure that you have organizations like local NGOs that have a good sense of the areas that they work in, they have a good sense of the populations they work in, that are able to go and do that door to door and walk with the landowners into what is a tree planting project, what it means for them and for the broader community, and what it means to make sure that these trees stay alive. So that was I think was an important step as well. So in the case of Montreal, they created, the city and an organization called Sauverdi created the Alliance, I guess in French we say Alliance Forêt Urbaine. So English it would translate to the Urban Forestry Alliance, which is a grouping of local NGOs across the island working towards greening and planting trees on private land, whether it's residential, institutional, or schools and hospitals, or really private companies.
Final question, Julien. The federal government has earmarked a fair amount of resources to plant, I think the goal is 2 million trees in a fairly short time. Will that kind of funding, is that something that Montreal intends to tap into, and will it accelerate the kind of urban forest growth that the city is looking for?
I think so. I think that many municipalities are going to look to that funding, as well as private businesses. We've been through the early calls for that funding, and there is money allowed for example, nurseries, which is going to be a big problem in terms of sourcing trees in the short to medium term, as demand is going to increase, as you can imagine, drastically. So to be able to source, strong, healthy trees for all these municipalities or private businesses, these structures are going to be necessary. So part of the investment definitely is going to be needed there, and I think it's a really good aspect. I think that what's going to be key for that is definitely integrating monitoring and biodiversity criteria, to kind of link to that funding, to make sure that we don't just plant trees for the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to plant trees for the next 50 to 75 years, hopefully, obviously depending on where the trees are planted. But I think it's going to be a lot of demand, but if it's rolled out in a way that is sustainable in terms of really the health of the forest as a whole, and not specifically each individual tree, I think that the federal government is going to see success in their program.
Great, Julien. Thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.